Welcome to the Finding Purpose LiveCast, where we feature authors, leaders, and speakers of purpose on a live platform to have truly authentic conversations. And now your host, Davin Salvagno.
Hey Shane, how's it going?
Hey, good, Davin. How are you this morning?
I am outstanding, brother. I am so excited that you are a guest today. You have an amazing story, an amazing comeback story, hence the shirt you're wearing today, which I can't wait for people to hear. So thank you for taking time out of your schedule to be here today. I know that you're going to inspire a lot of people with your message today.
You're welcome. Thanks so much for having me.
Absolutely. So today we are here with Shane Gianino. Shane is a great friend of mine. He's also a partner in some collaborative things that we are doing, but he is the founder and CEO of Pathway Staffing, which is a purpose-driven staffing company. And he has an absolutely incredible story. So Shane, I want you to take some time and share your heart and your story so people can know you the way that I have had the opportunity to know you. So why don't you take us back and give us some insight into who you are and, your journey.
Yeah, thank you. And thanks for everyone for being a part of this live cast with Davin Salvagno. My story started back when I was born in a Navy base in Portsmouth, Virginia. My mom was in the Navy and I was born there and moved up to Michigan to be raised by my grandparents. Attended a nearby local high school here, Mount Clemens High School. And ever since I was little, I was a basketball player, but I always had this little fire, this entrepreneur spirit inside of me of, what do you want to be when you grow up? And it was not necessarily being a basketball player, but, I'm 6'5", but it was, man, I want to be a business owner. And that spirit was there and started with launching a company when I was 21 years old called Business or Solutions.
That's a young time to start a company, 21 years old. How did you know that that's what you wanted to do at 21?
That's a great question. That particular business, I was good at it. What we did is we basically compiled custom marketing lists that we would provide, like databases, kind of like a Dun and Bradstreet on steroids, that we would sell data to other organizations that they would use that data for their marketing purposes. I was good at it. And I was sitting there thinking, man, I could just do this on my own, but offer more custom, fresh market intelligence, because data, people that know about data, you have the data governance or data just being old and out of date. So with the custom, we thought something new, but the purpose of the thought process of it was just, hey, I could just do this for myself. Why not? Let me give it a shot.
Wow. And so then that evolved, and then you had another venture that then started a little bit later, right?
Yeah. So, well, Business or Solutions, I was in business for about 5 years or so. September 11th hit, and that pandemic, and kind of took some wind out of our sails. So I went to go back work for corporate America for 9 years. And then in 2012 is when I launched my most recent startup, Q-Stride, which I was able to successfully start out of a Panera Bread, grow it, and then expand it, and then ultimately sell it in 2019 and exited that successfully.
And that ended up being one of the top 100 tech companies recognized in the time prior to acquisition, right? Something along those lines?
Yeah, prior to acquisition, we were acknowledged by Tech Week as a top 100 rising startup in 2018, I believe it was, is when Mayor Mike Duggan of the city of Detroit proclaimed us as an emerging growth technology services provider.
Awesome. And then, so that just happened. You just exited that basically last year. And then now you started a new company called Pathway Staffing, and the name is very, very purposeful. I love your story of kind of how that came to be. Would you share kind of what Pathway is and where that name came from?
Yeah. So the name Pathway. So in April is when of this year is when I exited Q-Stride, and I was thinking, okay, what's the next path or what's the next journey that I need to be on? And definitely, what's important to me is something that's purpose driven, that's going to have an impact. So I was watching a sermon, Elevation Church, Pastor Stephen Furtick, his wife Holly Furtick was giving a sermon on them going on a hike, and they were on a path, and they were basically supposed to follow the yellow or orange triangles at this park in the Charlotte area of North Carolina. And she got off the path, but just as we all go through life and we circle and circle, we know that God is our provider and that he is our compass. So when she started talking about path and falling off the path and then getting on the right path and getting on that right trail, I thought, wow, cool, path, pathway. Let me see if pathway.com is available. And that domain name was not available. Looked for pathways.com. That was not available. But Pathway Staffing was available. And I've been in the human resources, workforce staffing, contingent, labor, supplier for close to 20 years now. So it makes sense, Pathway Staffing. So that was how the name came about.
It's awesome. And you have this concept of where purpose meets path. So you said you wanted to be purpose driven. I know for you, and this is the Finding Purpose LiveCast, right? So there's a lot of people who have questions about what their purpose is and how you find that. And for you, with your staffing background, it really was about finding a job or a role or a position that aligns with your purpose and helping companies to think about the hiring process that way.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So talent matchmaking for purpose-driven talent to purpose-driven organization. So, what does that mean? I mean, we're heavy into technology and recruiting top software engineers. So it could be identifying those specific technologists that are working on, life-saving technology and matchmaking them. Or it could be recruiting, RNs, right? Nurses to hospitals that are purpose-driven.
That's awesome. And then they get to find the impact that they want to make because you were able to play that matchmaker role.
Yeah,
which is awesome.
Absolutely.
Now, I know that there's some listeners here that are staring at your shirt saying, well, there's a couple things. One, they're staring at a quote that's behind your head that they probably can't read the full thing, but I think it encompasses what you just talked about. So before I get to your shirt, what's the quote that's on the wall behind you, and why did you choose that quote?
Yeah, it's easy to make a buck. It's a lot tougher to make a difference. Tom Brokaw. As we go through our journey in life, and even during this time right now, this is a perfect example of this pandemic that we're in, and people questioning themselves, what's my purpose? Why am I here? What is my calling? So for me personally, it's a lot easy to get out there and make money. We're going to make money, but it's a lot tougher to make a difference. And to me, having that whole life success of making, what I like to say, whole life success and being of significance just is very important to me as an individual and to me as an entrepreneur in the business.
And I think, there's a lot of people who say that, right? Making a difference is important. Living a life of significance is important. But you have a very unique story that very few people know, that I think when they hear will help understand why that's important to you. So now tell us about the shirt. It says, I am a comeback. So I know that we're all curious. What are you a comeback from? And take us back to the adversity that you've faced in your life and how you've come back from that.
Yeah. So growing up, senior in high school, I was diagnosed with cancer. That was 17 years old, and that derailed my hopes of playing college basketball. The cancer necessarily didn't derail me. It was just being, naive, where the teachers, said, hey, just worry about getting healthy. So I felt that I took that as a kitchen pass of, I'm the sick kid of the school and I don't need to worry about anything. Well, before a basketball game, and the first game we had, I had almost a triple-double, double-digit points, double-digit rebounds, and almost double-digit blocks. But the coach came to me and said, hey, you can't play today. And I'm like, what do you mean? And I'm, my very first game is when I had my first outpatient treatment, and I had to get my chemotherapy and then, drive to Eisenhower to meet the team. And the coach said, well, you're ineligible. And oh man, that was just one of the most painful experiences of my life. It wasn't necessarily, well, there was pain in the cancer, which I like to refer to as finding the CAN all capital, in the cancer, and overcoming that through God's grace. But being told, as you go through your life, and you talk about, Davin, like finding your purpose, right? And you have a book coming out of finding purpose in the workplace, and your passion, right? And our kids, we talk about, to our kids, we want them to do what makes them happy, and finding what that purpose and that passion is that when you just love something so much and then it gets taken away from you, very, very, very painful. But everything happens for a purpose and a reason. So through God's grace, I was able to, overcome that adversity of finding the can and the cancer. I like to refer to is even there was an article in Macomb Daily, and when they wrote on me the story, I reference LL Cool J. Don't call it a comeback. I've been here for years, and that kind of goes into this whole revitalization of coming back to the roots, right? And Mount Clemens, and you and I getting united, and God at work and connecting us, and don't call it a comeback for Mount Clemens. That we're in it's been around for years, many, many, many years, a lot of history here, and we're here to help be that light. Another adversity that I had to overcome in my life, was just never meeting my dad. My father's in heaven, but I never met my dad. So my mom and met my dad in the Navy, and just never had the chance to meet him. So overcoming life's adversity, the dadlessness, the cancer, those are some curveballs that were thrown at me early on in life. But your setback is your setup.
You constantly have these great, find the can and the cancer. The setback is the setup, turning the test into a testimony, turning the mess into a message. You have such a great perspective of seeing the opportunity in every adversity. And I think when people get to know you, one of the things that I've noticed is that you're an advocate for pretty much anything. You come across any sort of nonprofit or purposeful or worthy cause, and you just want to help in some way, especially in a time right now, there's a lot of uncertainty, fear in the world. And Mr. Rogers, I saw a quote the other day, he said when his mom told him that when you would see scary stuff on the news, always look for the helpers. There's always the helpers. And to me, you are a helper, and you always have been one. Tell us about what is it that's within you that when you see, oh, that's cool, I can get behind that, or I can help that cause. Where does that come from?
It comes from your heart. It comes from your soul. I feel that I wear my heart on my sleeve, and I've been told that I have a good heart. So that's where that comes from, is having a good heart.
Well, I know you do, but I think also there's something deeper there. I think because you lived through that adversity, you relate to a lot of people who are going through it. I know there's some philanthropic things that you don't want to talk too much about, but I know that I want to make sure that we touch on that you're doing in Macomb County specifically, with some different charity outings and other things that you're involved in. So what are some other passionate things that are on your heart that I know that you want to shine the spotlight on?
Yeah, planting seeds for, economic development, planting seeds for the community. That's really important to me. So if we're doing and rolling our sleeves up and getting engaged, where it's not just writing a check, but getting engaged and uniting the community and bringing the community together. If it's, through certain events like golf outings or charity concerts with Billboard charted artists, or if it's, cornhole tournaments, we're using these as platforms to unite and to bring the community together to help raise awareness and money for these, charities that are local in the community, such as Families Against Narcotics, Hope Not Handcuffs, Family Youth Interventions, Turning Point, McCrest, Macomb Habitat for Humanity, to name a few.
Yeah, I know you're very involved with a lot of them. I enjoyed being at the Families Against Narcotics golf outing that you did last year, and look forward to being there again this summer. And such a tremendous cause. But I know one of the things, there seems to be something about youth also, and maybe it's because you relate to your childhood and what you went through as a senior in high school. But I remember reading the story on you coming back to Macomb County, if you will. And this is such an important point, because you were on this trajectory, right? I mean, you had started a company, it was successful. You'd started another company, it was successful. It was recognized as a top 100 tech company by a mayor of a major city in the country, in Detroit. So you had all this going for you. You were in downtown Detroit, in the epicenter of growth, and one of the coolest buildings down there. So there was all of this. And then you read about Mount Clemens High School. You read about the community that you were raised in, because you're from Mount Clemens. You grew up in this area, and you had raised about the poverty percentages and levels of students in this area. And there was a convicting power within you that all of a sudden that became more important than your own success, where you said, you know what, I need to go back to my roots. As you said, I need to move our office out of Detroit, move it back into Mount Clemens, and engage the community and do something about these statistics that you saw. Can you tell us a little bit about that? I would have loved to have been a fly on the wall when you were processing all of that.
Processing in terms, well, I mean, Mount Clemens was a once vibrant, city, and me as a graduate and alumni from Mount Clemens High School, right now the enrollment is only 245 total. They have right now in terms of athletics, a very talented young man by the name of Jonathan Hanna, who already has multiple scholarships. He's a sophomore, or he's going to be going into his junior year, the 2020-2021 season, where he has offers from Marquette, Rhode Island, Michigan State are looking at him. They haven't formally offered him, but just, when you look at those statistics, 245 total enrollment, and the percentage of the enrollment of 63% that are, economically disadvantaged, it makes you think, how can I, what can I do, to help? How can we, help our local community? These are the future, the youth are our future. So what can we do to help them to be successful and give them that opportunity?
Yeah. And that was very convicting for many don't know who are listening to this, but both of our offices, yours was in Detroit, mine was in Oakland County in Troy. And after reading your story about that number, only 200 some enrollment and 63% economically disadvantaged, and we need to do something. How can we help? And you moved your organization's office back to Mount Clemens, and where you were from. And I live 10 minutes from the city, even though I didn't grow up in Mount Clemens or go to Mount Clemens High School, because I grew up in Philly on the East Coast. But I've lived 20 minutes or 10 minutes from this town for the last 20 years. And so to see what you were doing as a trailblazer, coming in here, rolling up your sleeves and saying, I want to help. I don't know what that looks like, but I want to help. And kind of taking a side rail tour off of this journey of success that you were on in Detroit, and saying, no, this is more important. Bob Buford in his book Halftime talks about the journey to success and then the journey to significance. Mm-hmm. You were on this journey to success, and then you realized significance is more important. I want to make a difference. Like it says behind you, it's easy to make a buck, but it's a lot tougher to make a difference. And so you kind of set the growth on Detroit on hold, came back here to make a difference in this community. I'm excited about some of the things that you started doing before I ever came into this community, and some of the things that we get to do together. But there's a lot of purpose in the work that you're doing, and it comes from a great place. As we start to wrap up here, tell me about maybe the first time that you recognized that your work in particular had purpose, that it made a difference. And I'm not talking about any one company, because I know you have 3 different startups that you've launched, but your work personally in terms of what you do. When was the first time you recognized that your work has purpose?
I think when my previous startup, QStride, instead of the matchmaking of, talent and recruiting and helping companies identify top talent, it was thinking, okay, what is it that we're really doing here? And I came from Robert Half International, which is a very successful multi-billion-dollar recruiting and staffing organization. But to really think about, okay, what is it that we're doing and the impact that we're doing within that specific job of helping people better their careers. But a lot of us do our professions for, to make money, right? And you have your compensation, your base plus your commission. It was really when I built QStride and grew it to multi-million-dollar organization on a shoestring budget, all organic, growth, self-funded. It was okay. And when that expansion didn't work out, was really when I took a step back of looking at, okay, the whole life, being of significance, and what is my purpose, and what is that calling? Those with no life purpose, it's kind of like drifters, right? Aimlessly, we're just cruising through our life. We might be going to school, we get a job, we might, switch jobs, retire, and eventually, we die. They don't really live. We're not really living. We just kind of exist. And then there's those who, have the wrong life purpose. And that could have been at QStride when I would refer to as building this rocket ship piece by piece. And I don't know what planet I'm going to in outer space. And that's going from Jim Collins' Good to Great. He uses the bus, but I'm using a rocket ship because I'm in tech and we like to go fast in tech. But it's that wrong life purpose. And that we might be these like super achievers and we're so successful, we're making all this money, and we climbed all these ladders of financial, political, and social success, but only to find out that ladder was leaning up against the wrong wall. And that we discover, and sometimes they may have discovered too late or never really realized what they missed in terms of a purposeful life. And that can positively influence, others. And that's when I was going through this motion of QStride in 2016, when we went to expand in that beautiful space in downtown Detroit at the One Word Avenue building. And it didn't work out. And it was kind of like building your business on sand versus rock. It was a very, very, very aggressive play to grow, but bigger is not always better. And you learn to, through life's journey to be, content. But those who have the right life purposes, and it's hard, it's a struggle. They know why they were created. They know why God put them here on this earth. And they're all about fulfilling, that purpose. So it's a life that, brings a smile, to the face of God. And it's the success that lasts. And it doesn't have anything to do with how much, money or how popular we are or power or possessions. It has everything to do with that purpose. So for me, it started, it was a long journey, and now I'm really looking to be the light versus be that spotlight versus in the light.
I love it. True purpose is measured in impact. A life of significance is measured in impact and not in dollars. And it's so refreshing to see the transition that you've made over the course of your life, fighting to overcome adversity, fighting the cultural voices that tell us to succeed and chase after fame and fortune. And for you to have this self-realization and to be introspective and say, is my ladder leaning up against the right wall, and tend to come down and climb up the ladder on the other side where it actually matters and makes a difference, has been so inspiring to just watch as I've come to know you over these last couple of years. And I know that there are some people today that probably, as you just shared that last 5 or 10 minutes there, which was just nuggets of wisdom, that are wondering, what is my purpose? Is my ladder up against the right wall? How do you come down and start over? What about, all of the fear and risk that's associated with that? There's probably a ton of questions that we can answer today, but if you could leave one thing as we close with those listening today and in the future that would help them make that shift the way that you did, this shift from success to significance to pursuing a life of purpose in their personal life and their professional life, what would that word of advice be?
That's a great question. Well, first and foremost, are you happy? Are you happy in your current profession? Um, is what you're doing, does it have any impact? Are you making any impact? And if not, I think that, you need to really self-examine and look at, is this where I am called to be? Am I living out my strengths? And, if the answer is no, then I think that, you really need to start looking in another direction and go down another path.
So good. Thank you for sharing your story, your heart today, and for inspiring others to examine their life and look at changes that they might need to make, so that I think one of the most powerful things that you said was there's a difference between living and existing. There's a lot of people who go through the motions and just exist, but they're not really living. And living doesn't necessarily mean like living it up, and being all high and mighty, but living in terms of making sure that your life counts, that you make a difference in this world while you're here. So I just appreciate your heart. I appreciate our friendship. I am excited about the impact that you are making in the local community. I'm excited about the future of Pathway Staffing and seeing where this goes and how many people that you will help on that right path towards their purpose, as they're re-examining their careers and where they should be spending their time, and how that should develop. So thank you for approaching everything from that purposeful lens and for sharing your heart and your story today.
Oh, you're welcome. Thanks again for your time and the opportunity.
Absolutely. Today we were with Shane Gianino. He is the founder and CEO of Pathway Staffing. He is an overcomer. He's a cancer survivor, entrepreneur, philanthropist, and just someone with a genuine heart for people who wants to make a difference. And you can follow Shane on LinkedIn, on Instagram, on Facebook. You could also check him out at pathwaystaffing.com. Thank you for joining us today on another episode of the Finding Purpose LiveCast. We hope that you will tune in for future episodes as we continue to talk with authors, business leaders, and speakers and influencers of purpose. Till next time, live purposefully.